Goody will drive. Left-handed flush over the top of Kepning.
Pullback, step back three. Bottom!
Mavericks, it's short. Tip back in. Weaver got it. Yes!
Neely, the handoff. Jones for the tie.
Oh, he's fouled and one.
Presents itself is what you got to take. You can't.
It's knocked away. Still loose. Doherty, the heave. Oh, my God.
Welcome to the Straight Outta WAC podcast.
What's up, everybody? It is another episode of Straight Outta WAC live on this WAC Wednesday. Here I am, me and Derryl on my other side. It's been a few weeks since we've had this Straight Outta WAC live show going for you here during the midday hour. Christmas time, New Year's, Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy New Year to everyone. Hopefully it'll be a good 2024 for everyone. And you had a happy holiday season. Mine was pretty chill. We got to just chill here in Utah with the family. But then I took a trip to Las Cruces this past weekend. I got to go to El Paso for the first time. And the Sun Bowl, thanks Eddie Morales for the credential. Bill Hardy, my good friend, for going with me. And then, was there for the New Mexico State CBU WAC Conference USA Scheduling Initiative game. It was the final game of that scheduling initiative on the men's side. Derryl, how was your Christmas and New Year, my friend?
Not bad. Covered a high school tournament final. Watched a lot of little bits of the bowl games, and a lot of college basketball.
Yeah. Those two playoff games on New Year's Day were pretty awesome. Like, I know some people hated on them, whatnot, but those were awesome. Like, those were good ball games, and we got a pretty intriguing national championship game coming up between Michigan and Washington. So I'm excited to watch that. With that being said, we are back to conference play this week. We're ramping it up now. It's January. Thursday, there will be 5 men's games and 5 women's games. So every Thursday, Saturday now for the next 2 months. I am pretty stoked that we get back to conference play now that non-conference is finished. Let's break down some things from non-conference play to start off this show today, this first show of 2024. We will be coming to you every day at between 12:30 and 1. It depends on the start time, depends on some scheduling stuff, but that'll be mountain time as well. So every day, Monday through Friday, and then Saturday we may have some post-game wrap-up shows, maybe a pre-game show. We'll see how that works out depending on where I'm at, where Derryl's at, but we'll go from there. So let's talk about this non-conference slate. We see, according to the WAC resume seating system, on the men's side, GCU, I feel like I tweeted out yesterday, they have the 1 seed locked up. Like, the only way they don't get that 1 seed is if they're one of those 3 teams that doesn't even make it to the WAC tournament in March. Like, that's the only way, because they're so far ahead, and with every game having a point value of 1, they could stumble 3 or 4 times and still be the 1 seed. Like, that's how big their lead is right now.
Yeah, the Lopes on the men's side have gotten off to a really impressive start. I mean, I know it's only the second year of doing this system, but who hears of a lead that big in early part of January, where we're barely 2 games into conference play, but with a lot of the conference games in the WAC being 0.2, 0.3 win gain value. I mean, you're right. They could probably lose 3, 4, or 5 and afford to lose.
Yeah, I mean, the teams will get big points if they win at GCU, obviously, because of where the Lopes are on the net and so forth. I think we saw that on the women's side last year with SFA. I think they got off to such a good start. Mark Kellogg's team with Jordan Harrison and those guys, they got such a good start that even with Southern Utah winning the regular season title, nobody could catch the Lady Jacks last year. So we've seen it 2 years in a row now where a team just plays so well in their non-conference slate, wins the games that maybe they weren't supposed to. I know they weren't favored against – GCU wasn't favored against Liberty or San Diego State, and they won both those games. So they've earned that, right? They've earned that with the way the seeding system's set up. Ken Palm has them predicted to win every game from here on out. There's a comment here. Crystal Mullen, hello. I love your interactions. Love your support. We appreciate it. Hope you had a happy new year. But that's the thing. That's the difference between this year and last year. Some of the other teams haven't had those quality wins that could have pushed them a little bit closer and closed that gap for that, those top 2 seeds. Seattle U's been better down the stretch here of non-conference play. ACU's played a little bit better, but it's just I think the Lopes already have it locked up, and we only played 2 conference games because of what they did in their non-conference schedule. It's closer on the women's side, though. That's a good news. It's closer on the women's side, despite what CBU's done in their non-conference slate.
Yeah, it is, and that that GCU win over Middle Tennessee on Saturday really helped close up that gap. Otherwise, it would be not quite what the men's margin is, but pretty similar. I think what did I say it was yesterday? It's like 1.2 points, and you can get 1.2 points.
Yep. Yeah, it is. I'm going to look it up here just to be sure. You did tweet it out yesterday. But we're looking at the WAC resume seating system real quick, just kind of where everybody stands. And right now on the women's side, California Baptist at 10-1 holds a 1.20 lead in the points for the 1 seed over Grand Canyon. And here's the thing. I think on the women's side, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, getting those top 2 seeds will be significant, right? And I unless something drastic happens in conference play, again, this is one of those things. I think California Baptist, Grand Canyon are going to finish 1-2. I don't know who will be the regular season champ, but they're going to be the top 2 seeds unless SFA pulls something out of their hat throughout conference play. But the lead after SFA for the rest of the WAC is still significant. Like UT Arlington, they have 4 wins, but they're the 4 seed right now if we were to start the WAC tournament, just because of the quality of their wins, right? Like, this is going to be a wild next 2 months, 2.5 months. I'm so excited for it.
Oh, yeah. And Sharika Wright's team is rounding into form at the right time, it sounds like. Nice win over New Mexico State. Close win over New Mexico State on Saturday. That was a 1-point barn burner. And
yep.
I don't know if we'll get to the final day of the WAC CUSA initiative, some of those games, but that was probably the best game of the slate, in terms of competitiveness. GCU was in control against Middle 10. They led for 37 minutes against a team that's made it to the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
I think it's like 4 times in the last decade, 5 times in the last decade.
Yeah.
And a team that has a win over Tennessee this year.
I think GCU, the start that they got off the women's team, Molly Miller's team, I think it was a little bit of a struggle, and we all had questions like, is this going to be another one of those years where they win a lot of games or they win games and then they lose games that maybe they should have won, so forth. Like the offense got off to a slow start, even though Nadia Evans hit buzzer beaters to win games. But they played well in December. Like they played really well in December. That Middle Tennessee game was a stamp on their non-conference slate. It's going to be fun to watch. I want to go to the schedule real quick and see. So, I mean, we have to wait till, is that right? February? Yeah, so we have to wait till February 17th until we get to see California Baptist versus Grand Canyon. That game on February 17th is in Riverside, and then they finish up the regular season on March 9th in Phoenix. So that game, we'll see how it plays out, but those 2 games could decide the 1 and 2 seeds for the WAC tournament in March.
Well, it most definitely could, and let's not, discount SFA either.
Yep.
Nice win before the holiday break against Austin Peay. When they had to rally from a nice deficit to get. Tyler McClymont-Call scored her 500th career point in that game.
Yep.
So congratulations, Tyler. But I think that was one that the Lady Jacks really needed because they had lost 3 straight before that game. Alabama, Middle 10, and I can't remember who the other one was, but Troy.
Yeah. Yep. No, Leonard Bishop has this team playing well too. Like they've won some games they probably shouldn't have. They scored 100 points twice, sure, against non-Division One opponents, but either way, they've been playing well down the stretch here as they get ready to host UTRGV on Thursday before heading to UT Arlington and facing former Lady Jack Avery Brittingham on Saturday. So some big games coming up there. We're going to talk a little bit more about the seating system right after this little 30-second break. So stick with us. All right, we're back on this episode, this WAC Wednesday episode of the Straight Outta WAC live show. Derryl with me, who covers a lot of women's basketball in this league. He was tweeting out a lot over the break for women's basketball games, even some men's games when I was busy with family stuff. So give him a shout out. Anyways, before I get into the WAC resume seating system, I want to just throw this out there. If you haven't already seen it, we have a promo code WAC Hoops Nation. If you go to SeatGeek.com or the SeatGeek app, purchase your tickets to events, basketball games, football games, baseball games, concerts, and so forth. You get, if you use the code WAC Hoops Nation, you'll get $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. So go ahead and use that promo code WAC Hoops Nation to get $20 off your first purchase of $50 or more for tickets to events. As well as that, we're also offering a subscription discount right now to our Substack. You can get a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription for 50% off. So instead of $8 a month, you get it for $4 a month. Instead of $80 a year, you get it for $40 per year. You just go to our Substack page, wachoopsnation.substack.com, and sign up for a paid subscription. That will go for the next year. So from January 4th to January 4th, 2024, get 50% off your subscription. We're going to put some stuff behind paywalls now, some feature stories, and some other in-depth stories. I put one out about the seating system today. So go ahead and subscribe. And if you want to become a free subscriber so you get the newsletter 3 to 5 times per week in your inbox, go ahead and do that as well. Anyways, on to the WAC resume seating system. I don't know if you read that article I sent you, Derryl, about that Ken Palm wrote. Did you read that? Did you have a chance to look at that?
Not yet.
Okay. So I got this sent today by my good friend Bill Hardy. I don't know why I'm not subscribed to Ken Palm's Substack page. But it's called A Salute to the WAC. Excuse me, guys, I've been under the weather a little bit here. But it's called A Salute to the WAC resume seating system. And it goes on and on about how this is a good thing, even though there was a lot of criticism about it from people last year. I have mixed thoughts about this seating system. I put out some polls, put one out on Twitter today, put one out on Instagram as well. I like that it challenges teams to put together more competitive non-conference schedules, that it challenges teams to avoid non-Division I teams, and it challenges you to go out and get quality non-conference games, right? As it stands right now, though, the WAC only gets 9 non-conference games that aren't kind of forced on them because of the 2 WAC Conference USA games, right? So they get 11 non-conference games. 9 of them are what they get to choose and how they get to, go with that. My other issue is that teams like California Baptist and teams like Grand Canyon, who have resources that they can have more home games, they could pay teams to come to Riverside or Phoenix, compared to the UTRGVs, the SFAs, the Utah Valleys, Southern Utah is where they can't pay to have more home games, right? There's a little bit of an unbalance there. The other thing is, depending on the MTE, who do you get to play in your MTEs? So there's a lot of imbalance there, right? And that's not just on the men's side; it's on the women's side too. So I like that there's an emphasis on the whole resume, the whole scope of work, right? I love that there's an emphasis on non-conference games. I do take a little bit of an issue, and I'll use Utah Valley, for example. Their men's team went, if I remember right, I had it written down here. After a 2-3 start, which included the loss to Morgan State in Jamaica last year, Utah Valley finished the regular season 24-7. So, technically, they were 24-7. So they went 22-4 from November 17th on. But according to this article from KenPom, and I said this in my article that I wrote, how is it that a loss in November kept Utah Valley, who had wins at BYU, who had wins over Long Beach State, who had wins at Oregon, who had a win over Sam Houston, and won the WAC? How is it that they didn't get the 1 seed because of a loss in November? That's where my problem lies, okay? Chris, I'll answer your question. Sorry. MTE is a multi-team event. So those tournaments that happen in November around Thanksgiving week. GCU kind of played in theirs in the Arizona tip-off. Who was it? The SFA was in the Cayman Islands Classic. So there's teams go to those each year. Anyways, that's where my problem lies, is I know that there's such an emphasis put on non-conference scheduling in this seeding system. I would love to see a little bit more emphasis added for what happens in conference play now, especially that we have a balanced schedule where everybody plays everybody twice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with the more emphasis on what happens in conference play. And next year, when the non-D1 limit goes to 1, I'm really curious to see how teams replace the spots that they were filling those non-D1s with. Are we going to see more of our teams host MTEs next year? Are we going to see more teams use MTEs to fill their spots instead of just one-offs and home and homes? I mean, we had 2 teams that went over the non-D1 limit this year. Abilene Christian on the women's side and Tarleton Wright on the men's went over the non-D1 limit.
Yep. And the interesting thing is Tarleton's still on the 2 seed, even with that half point deduction that they got for playing 3 non-division ones. So I mean, they have 0.43 points, which is ahead of Seattle U and SFA and so forth. But it could come into play down the stretch. Talking to coaches around the league, it's so hard to schedule because they're not a quad 2, they're not a quad 1. Most of the WAC teams are quad 3, quad 4, right? And so it doesn't necessarily benefit a team to go play a WAC team at their home gym. I mean, for GCU, yeah, it might. Teams get a benefit from there because it could be a quad 1 win with where they're ranked in the net. But it doesn't benefit them because if they win, well, then it's just a road win, though. It's a notch in the belt. If they lose, though, it hurts them more than it helps them. So it's so hard for these teams to get quality home games. Some of the San Diego State game for GCU this year was a return game from the Dan Marley era. Okay, it wasn't like they reached out and said, "Hey, we want to schedule you guys this year. We want you to come to Phoenix." No, it's just a return game. Louisiana Tech going to SFA. That was a return game from last year for the Jacks.
Portland going to SFA on the women's side was a return game.
Right. So it's so, unless teams are willing to schedule home and homes, and go on the road first, it's going to be a struggle for teams to schedule. And they all want home games. That's the key point. I know that I've been told this by multiple coaches. We want home games. Okay, I get it. I totally do. Everybody wants a home game. How, like you said, when it goes down to one non-D1 game allowed next year, how is that going to affect teams that struggle to get home games? I'm very interested in the other thing that I think that let's say that Tarleton finishes with a similar record to GCU in WAC play. They still could be the 2 seed, or the 3 seed. They could be on the outside looking in, even though they finished with the same record as GCU or tied for the regular season title. Those 3 non-Division I games where they didn't get any points could come into play right there. Whereas another school who didn't play non-D1s or played just one could have more points because they played fewer non-Division I teams. That's the intrigue in the seeding system, like scheduling wise. Like, are you willing to take the chance of not getting any points at all versus the chance of winning or losing a ball game that could impact the points? Like, it's going to be very interesting. I have mixed emotions, mixed feelings about the seeding system. I think it's good in theory. I love that it challenges teams to schedule more competitive non-conference slates. I love that every game counts. I just have a hard time with the fact that we played 2 conference games and basically on the men's side, the 1 seed is already locked up. Like, what does that tell the other teams? Like, what are we playing for? Right? Like that's hard for me to wrap my head around. They're still playing for a regular season title and a ring, but as we saw last year on both the men and the women's side, the regular season champion was not the 1 seed. And I think that makes a lot of people scratch their head, if that makes sense. Now, I know that the justification is, well, this is how the NCAA tournament does it. They get everybody, eligible. The teams are eligible for the NCAA tournament. They put them into a hat or whatever, and they seed them according to their body of work. That's what the WAC is trying to do, is seed everybody according to their body of work. I get it. I just don't know if that's terribly beneficial for a 1-bid league, if that makes sense. Especially one where last year the 1 and 2 seeds didn't even win the WAC tournament. The 5 seed did in GCU. So a lot of mixed emotions and mixed feelings about the seeding system.
Yeah, I mean, you made all the arguments right there. I mean, especially the one where it's, you have the GCUs and the CBUs who can afford to bring teams in for MTEs and home and homes and whatnot, versus everybody else who may have to go play a bye game or 2.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I think there's gonna be a lot of debate as the season goes along. I think it'll be more so for those 2, 3, 4 spots. Like, who's going to come out on top? Because this league is about to cannibalize itself outside of GCU, and maybe even some teams get the best of GCU, man, this year. On the women's side, I think it's going to be the same thing. I think it's going to be a league that cannibalizes itself because there's a lot of depth on the women's side this year, despite what CBU's done, despite what GCU's done. We've seen ACU play well. We've seen SFA play well. UT Arlington is playing better. So there's Utah Tech is right there too. And Bill Brock's Tarleton squad. That's what I love about the next 2.5 months. Is this league is gonna on both the men's and the women's side. It's gonna show just how deep and how good it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at the fact that we had at one point 3 teams in the College Insider top 25 on the women's side. With this week's poll, it goes down to 2 as SFA dropped out of the receiving votes category, and CBU is just holding on to the top 25 right now.
Yep. Yeah, and that's crazy because they're what 12-1 if I remember right.
10-1.
10-1 overall. Like that's crazy. Like it's just crazy that they're on the fringe of a mid-major poll, even though they played really well. So
And against a pretty good schedule.
Yeah,
albeit all West Coast, but still.
It just tells me that not enough people have seen the CBU women's basketball team play, and they should. You really should. Like all Jared Olson does is win. Okay, so let's talk about that for real quick. So 2020-21, the Lancer women went undefeated through the regular season, rolled through the WAC tournament, and they weren't eligible for the NCAA tournament, so they went and played in the WNIT, and that was where they suffered their only loss that season, right?
To Rice in a regional semifinal.
Yeah, in a regional semifinal. Last year, even though I don't think anybody expected them to, the Lancers made it to the WAC tournament title game. They just didn't have the size to match up with Southern Utah. And then they won the WBI. Like Jared Olson has won like 70% of his games as a head coach at CBU. And what was it? It was number 400 this year that he picked up, right? In that win over Pepperdine that he showed a lot of emotion that day in that win. So this guy can coach, okay? People I don't think give him enough credit because the Lancers are just quietly winning. Like they're just constantly winning. The brand isn't huge, right? CBU brand isn't huge. Not like a GCU. And Molly Miller continues to win too. So, oh man, and Jared Olson has roster turnover every single year. His best player from last year is now at Grand Canyon. So, it's going to be a fun women's race, just like it was with the men last year. I know we've talked a lot about women's basketball in this show today, but rightfully so. We need to give a lot of credit to where it's due because the WAC is pretty. I like the depth on the women's side this year, and I don't know that we all saw that coming.
No, I mean, and even though we lost the WAC CUSA initiative on the women's side, it was an 11-7 final in favor of CUSA. There were 3 games decided by 2 possessions or less of those 7 losses.
Yeah.
So we're proving we can hang with CUSA.
Well, speaking of that WAC CUSA scheduling initiative, I really hope they market the crap out of that thing next year. Like I really do. From what I was told, the teams are going to play the WAC teams, at least on the men's side, are going to host a game in November on the same day or the same weekend altogether. And then on the women's side, or not on the women's side, then in December, the CUSA teams are going to host the game on the same day, same weekend, little bundle there. I like that. And you need to market that because this series on both sides, men's and women's, was so good. I think on the men's side, I was doing the math the other day. We had 4 overtime games. Road teams won 6 of the games, 7 of the games. And there was only 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 blowouts out of 18 games between the WAC Conference USA teams.
Yeah, on the women's side, it was pretty similar. It was 10.4 point margin of victory. I think 2 really what you would call blowouts: Louisiana Tech blowing out CBU and Ruston, and Stephen F. Austin getting blown out by Middle Tennessee State and Murfreesboro. But other than that, you had games that came down to New Mexico State blowing out Utah Valley. So 3, but other than that, it was a really good slate of games, and I'm really happy they came up with the idea. It just does need to be marketed better on a national level.
Yep. And next year there'll be 9. There'll be what do we have? There'll be 10 games or 10 teams in both leagues. So 20 games next year with the home and homes, right? So Yeah, I think it needs to be marketed more. I think it needs marketed better. Why not call it the WAC Conference USA Challenge? That's
Like
exactly what it is. Have a trophy for the winner that goes in the conference office. Like that's what the Big Ten ACC Challenge does, or the Big 12 SEC. Like, make it worth its while. Like, this was a fantastic year to show how competitive both leagues are and how similar both leagues are as well to one another. So, and in the Ken Pump standings, they're right next to each other at 13 and 14. So, like, it's perfect. Like, just market it better and put some of the bigger games, or find a way to get some of the bigger games on the ESPN linear family of networks, or CBS Sports, something to that effect. Like, just do it. Like, I know I'm pretty demanding with that, but it's like, I was at a lot of these games. I saw what was going on with a lot of these games, and they were fantastic. It was fantastic basketball, even though CBU shot like garbage on Saturday against New Mexico State. But still, it's just one of those things that it needs to be marketed better. Oh, don't get me going on this. That's a topic. We'll come back in 30 seconds. We're going to talk about WAC play getting back underway, what we kind of expect, what we're looking forward to, and wrap it up a little bit. All right, we're back on this WAC Wednesday episode of the Straight Outta WAC live show. Derryl Trujillo from Riverside, and I am in Utah. It's a little chilly here, and the air is awful here. I don't know how bad it is out there, but the air is awful here in Utah right now.
It's a little chilly here. I think it rained this morning.
Nice.
Still a little bit overcast. But yeah, it should be a nice weekend. Good thing for me because I have a high school game on Friday to cover, and waiting on a Saturday game.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, let's talk about these WAC games coming up. I'm excited. WAC play resumes after a month-long hiatus. We had 2 games, one game late November and then one game in early December to get in the 20 game conference schedule. Excuse me. On the men's side, we start off really early on Thursday, a rare noon Central Time tip when Stephen F. Austin goes to UTRGV. I asked Jonah Goldberg, the SID at UTRGV, about it. I need to find my message here. Yeah, I asked them about it. They just said they're trying something different. Most of the public schools are still on break this week. So they're also doing a faculty staff promotion in which they sent out an excuse note from Matt Feger to get an extended lunch break because this faculty and staff get free admission. And they're also inviting Winter Texans, like the Snowbirds, out to come to the ball game. So that's why they're playing it so early. So we get off bright and early. Like, it's 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. tip off for me, noon Central Time tip off for, SFA fans and UTRGV fans and other WAC fans and college basketball fans. So I don't know if we have that on the women's side. Do we have that on the women's side?
I don't believe so. I believe all of our tip-offs tomorrow are in the traditional windows.
Yeah, 6 p.m. Central, Tarleton at UT Arlington, 6:30 UTRGV at Stephen F. Austin. Those are Central times, and then 7 p.m. 6 p.m. Mountain Time for Southern Utah at Grand Canyon, and then 7 p.m. for Utah Valley at CBU, that's Mountain Time, and 7 p.m. Mountain Time for CLU at Utah Tech. So let's talk about Thursday. We'll break down the Thursday games a little bit more tomorrow on this show. But let's talk about maybe a game you're looking forward to on the women's side, or maybe a matchup you're looking forward to seeing what goes down.
I think for me tomorrow, I want to see how GCU follows up that win over Middle Tennessee State. They did get hit with a little bit of the injury bug at the end of that one. So, A, I want to see if the Lopes are at full strength. B, how fired up they are for Southern Utah, who ended their season last year. And, you know, how will Tracy Mason's squad respond to the resumption of WAC play? They lost by like 20 at UTEP in their finale of the WAC CUSA initiative. But the T-Birds are, had a nice win over New Mexico over the holiday break. I think we just want to see if they can put it together for 40 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Crystal. My DSLR camera sometimes goes out. It might get too hot. So I apologize to everybody that was watching. Now I'm on my laptop camera. That's not great. Doesn't have great angle, but feels like it's looking up my nose. It's kind of annoying. Anyways, yeah. So on the men's side, I think this is a tough one for me. I think the big one is UT Arlington at Tarleton State at 7 p.m. Central in Wisdom Gym. Tarleton's coming off that win over LMU to end non-conference play. UT Arlington has kind of been hit or miss so far. They played well at New Mexico, but then got blown up by Arizona. They played well at Grand Canyon, but before falling late. They beat Air Force, and they've lost 3 straight, but, I mean, they lost at Texas Tech, at North Texas, and then they lost at number 21 Texas on New Year's Day. So I think this might be a game that could what do I want to say? Be a potential deciding game for the 2 seed. And I say that because I think UT Arlington is going to make a run in this league this year now that Philip Russell is eligible, and they shoot the lights out sometimes. So if they get hot, watch out. Tarleton is Tarleton. They play hard. They get after things. They have scores in Lou Williams, Ja'Cory Smith. Keandre Gaddy is playing really good basketball. And we know how hard they play, especially on the defensive end. So I think that's a game I'm looking forward to. I think that could very well have a significant impact on who gets the 2 seed in March. And I know it's way early to talk about that. And I know Seattle U is probably listening in and like, this guy's doesn't know what he's talking about. Guys, I think Seattle U is going to be in the mix. So I think this game, this UT Arlington at Tarleton game, will play a significant role depending on how things play out throughout the next 2.5 months. But I really like that ball game, and it's going to go down in, I don't want to say West Texas, more like Central Texas at Wisdom Gym. I was at Wisdom Gym a couple weeks ago. It'll be a fun game to watch tomorrow. That's all I'll say about that, and we'll break it down a little bit more tomorrow on the show. Is there another game that sticks out to you, or maybe a matchup you want to see
from tomorrow night's slate? That UTA Tarleton game kind of has my eye also. Can Sharika Wright's bunch keep that winning streak going? Bill Brock's team got a nice win at Texas Southern over the break. Faith Acker won the Player of the Week and the Newcomer Awards, which it seemed for the second time in 3 weeks, Tarleton sweeps the awards. Ja'Cory Long got it that week that they beat McNeese at McNeese.
Yep.
That's another one. You have Acker who's playing well. You have Long. Can the Texans string together enough points to keep up with UTA? Because we've seen that UTA offense against ACU played pretty well. They scored enough points to win that game.
Yep.
They just could not get a stop against ACU. And then can Sharika Wright's bunch string together enough stops? Because we know they'll score enough points offensively. Can they string enough stops together to win that game?
Yep. Very true. On the men's side, there is the WAC tournament title game rematch between Grand Canyon and Southern Utah. I have a tough time with this one, not because it's not a big game and whatnot, because it's in Cedar City. So, and it's Rob Jeter's, his third WAC game, because they already played twice. They're 0-2 right now. But it's not the same game that it was in March. Todd Simon's not there. Southern Utah had entire roster turnover outside of Parsifala, Braden Housley, and Zion Young, and Braden Housley redshirted. So he didn't even play the game in that title game last year. And it's one of those few true road tests that GCU's had so far this early season. So that gives it a little intrigue, but this is a game. If GCU really wants to make that statement that they deserve an at-large bid, they have to win by double figures. Like, I know people say, well, it's conference play, it's on the road. No, they're expected to win by double figures according to Ken Palm. They have to win games that they're expected to win by double figures, period. And then there's one other matchup I mentioned today on Twitter. Dominique Daniels Jr. from California Baptist against Jaden McClanahan of Utah Valley tomorrow night in Orem. I'll be there at the UCC Center. I like that matchup. Two quick, small guards, left-handed. I have a bias towards left-handed people because I am left-handed. And both can just beat people off the dribble. Both have, like I said, have eyes in the back of their head with some of the passes they make. Dominic Daniels gets up a little bit higher than Jaden McClanahan does. But I'm excited to see these two small, quick point guards go at each other tomorrow night in Orem. So it's going to be a fun one. Anyways, what are your predictions for this week of WAC play, Derryl? I know we'll get into the games more on Thursday, Friday, and so forth, but let's throw out a couple of predictions before we end this episode of the Straight Outta WAC live show.
I think we'll see a pretty good slate of games. I think we'll see a lot of these 12 games this week, come down to the fourth quarter. There's a funny feeling I have about that first game back from holiday break, especially like if you're SFA, you played a non-D1 in UNT Dallas. A lot of teams have been idle for 10 or 12 days from game action. CBU's been idle for 10 days, I believe it is, and they come back to Utah Valley at home. How will the idle time and the break play itself out over this week? How quickly will teams find their footing? That's what I'm interested to see.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't know what to expect. It's such a toss. I mean, Utah Tech is at Seattle U on the men's side tomorrow night at the Red Hawk Center. Utah Tech's 2-0 in WAC play. And they've had some bad losses since that time, but they beat Utah Valley. They won at CBU. Can they keep that rolling? Can John Judkin's crew just mess up everything in the WAC with another win over a Red Hawk team that's playing better, right? UT, excuse me, guys. UT Arlington at Tarleton. Like that's the game of the night. If I'm being honest, that is the game of the night, right there. Grand Canyon at Southern Utah, the title game rematch. CBU at Utah Valley, another game with two teams that I don't think have played their best basketball yet this year. So we'll see how that plays out. SFA at UTRGV. It's an early tip-off. Who knows what can happen in those kind of games? Gosh, it's just going to be so much fun. So much fun. All those games are on ESPN Plus tomorrow as well, and on the women's side as well. So, guys, remember, if you want to get tickets to a basketball game, a football game, any kind of event, go through SeatGeek.com or get the SeatGeek app and use the promo code WACHoopsNation to get $20 off your first order or first purchase of tickets that are over $50. We appreciate the support. Go to our Substack page. Make sure you subscribe. Again, we have a 50% off conference discount, I guess you could say, conference play discount, where you get 50% off your monthly or your yearly subscription. So you get $4 a month or $40 for a full year, and then it'll renew after 12 months. So anyways, Derryl, any last thoughts as we end this Straight Outta WAC live show for this WAC Wednesday?
No, it's nice to get back to WAC play. I'm hoping to travel a little bit more during the 2024 season, depending on some certain things. Um, but yeah, it's an exciting time to get back to conference play. And I'm excited to see how the rest of this race plays itself out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody, enjoy the rest of your WAC Wednesday, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Straight Outta WAC live show.
Thanks for listening to the Straight Outta WAC podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcasting platforms. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Remember to follow WAC Hoops Nation on all your favorite social media platforms.